5 motorcycle brands are quietly disappearing from America. Dealers are closing, parts are drying up, and resale values are already at risk. If your bike carries one of these names, you could be riding into longer waits, higher costs, and fewer options on the open road. This isn't rumor. It's playing out in real dealer closures and rider reports right now. Stay with me, because the final brand on this list is the one no one ever expected. Number 5. Suzuki. The name, once spoken with respect in garages and roadside diners across America, now carries a quieter presence than it once did. Riders who cut their teeth on affordable machines that blended reliability with straightforward performance remember the satisfaction of long highway miles without worry. For years, it was the trusted option for riders who wanted to enjoy the road without emptying their wallets. Its reputation as the working man's companion was earned by building motorcycles that offered strength, simplicity, and honest value. Riders who wanted to start their journey into motorcycling often found themselves astride one of these machines, discovering the feeling of freedom that only a dependable bike can deliver. Yet in the American market, the brand's presence has slipped. Dealership networks have thinned, visibility has decreased, and competitors have surged ahead with aggressive designs and technology. That steady heartbeat that once defined the name in the United States has grown faint. One rider from Ohio recalled his first experience with the brand in a letter to a motorcycle magazine. He bought his bike with money saved from summer shifts at the mill and rode it daily for years, rain or shine. He wrote about the way it never failed him, even when miles piled up and he could only afford to fix it himself in a dimly lit garage. To him, the machine was more than transportation. It was freedom on 2 wheels, a reliable partner that carried him to work, to visit family, and on weekend rides across the countryside. His words captured what countless Americans once felt, that this brand represented dependability and honest value for ordinary men who wanted the open road without luxury price tags. Through the 1970s and 1980s, the logo became a familiar sight in small-town dealerships where trust was built not by flashy marketing, but by performance that endured. Fathers passed these bikes down to sons, and communities often came together to keep them running, sharing tools, knowledge, and pride. Yet the very qualities that made the motorcycles popular have also worked against them in the modern era. A conservative approach to styling and design kept models familiar, but left them vulnerable to being labeled dated. Competitors pressed ahead with bold updates, electronic features, and striking visuals, while this brand held to its tried-and-true formula. For riders who now demand a machine that feels modern and competitive, the contrast has become harder to ignore. Another challenge has been support. In the past, dealers were common, scattered across towns both large and small. Today, riders in rural areas may have to travel long distances for service, parts, or even a chance to sit on a new bike in a showroom. The strength of a motorcycle is not only in how it rides, but in the confidence a rider has that help is available when needed. A shrinking dealer map erodes that confidence, pushing many riders toward brands with broader support. For men who grew up knowing that their first bike or their neighbor's weekend cruiser likely carried this badge, the shift feels like losing a piece of familiar American motorcycling life. The racing heritage that once reinforced the brand's image has also faded. Decades of victories built credibility, reminding riders that the same company building their everyday machine could dominate on the track. But stepping away from premier racing in 2022 signaled to many that the company no longer viewed its motorcycle division as central to its identity. Enthusiasts who valued competition felt that something important was lost. Without those moments of glory feeding into showroom pride, the motorcycles risk being seen as steady but uninspired. Still, nostalgia holds power. Older riders remember the long road trips, the mechanical tinkering, and the affordability that made the bikes accessible in years when wages were modest. These memories fuel loyalty among a core base of enthusiasts who refuse to let the brand's presence disappear. Yet loyalty alone cannot sustain a company in an industry where new buyers and modern impressions matter most. Younger generations who did not grow up with the name see little reason to choose it when competing brands push harder to capture attention. The future of the brand in America depends on more than cherished memories. It requires renewed commitment to design, stronger investment in dealer networks, and a message that resonates with both seasoned riders and new enthusiasts. Without these steps, the motorcycles risk being remembered warmly, but chosen rarely. For the older men who still trust the badge, the bond remains powerful, but the horizon is clouded with uncertainty as the roar of this once dependable companion grows quieter on American highways. The story serves as a reminder that no brand, no matter how reliable, is immune from being overlooked. The next entry on this list shows that even passion and heritage cannot always shield a name from the relentless pull of changing markets. If you're still here, you care about the truth behind these disappearing motorcycles. Show your support, hit the subscribe button, and drop a comment telling us which brand you believe is struggling most. Number 4. Moto Guzzi. Among the most storied motorcycle names of Europe stands a brand that once carried a mystique all its own, a mark that represented independence, tradition, and soulful engineering. Riders who chose it were not looking for the most common machine on the road. They were seeking individuality, a sense of owning something crafted with character and pride. The history stretches back more than 100 years, and across that time, the name has been linked with both racing prestige and artisan craftsmanship. The motorcycles have always stood apart, but in today's American market, the presence of this brand has grown faint, leaving loyalists to carry the torch while the wider riding community moves on. One rider from Arizona shared his story in a community newsletter, remembering how he had purchased his first motorcycle from this brand in the late 1970s. He wrote about the day he brought it home, how neighbors gathered around to hear the unique sound and admire the styling that seemed unlike anything else on the street. He recalled the long rides through desert highways, the sense of being part of something rare, and even the challenges of finding parts when breakdowns happened. For him, those obstacles were part of the bond. He admitted that keeping it on the road required patience, but every mile reminded him that he owned a machine with soul. His testimony mirrors the devotion that many riders still hold, even as the brand's presence in the United States continues to shrink. During the 1970s and 1980s, this brand carried a reputation that drew riders seeking authenticity over mass production. Its motorcycles were seen as statements of independence, chosen by those who wanted to stand apart from the crowd. The name represented something more than transportation. It represented an identity. Yet over time, the landscape of motorcycling changed. Competitors moved aggressively forward, refreshing their lineups, adopting modern technology, and expanding their reach. Meanwhile, this brand held to its traditions. What once appeared timeless began to feel unchanged, leaving younger riders less inclined to take notice. The thinning dealer network has also proven to be a heavy weight on its shoulders. Where once there were shops scattered across regions of the country, today only a handful remain, and many riders must travel long distances to find official support. For some, that barrier is too steep. They admire the heritage but choose something easier to maintain. For loyalists, the struggle becomes part of the ownership experience. They accept the inconvenience because they feel connected to the history. But for the broader market, the lack of visibility and access has kept the brand from thriving. Within its larger corporate family, attention has often gone toward other names that sell in greater volume. Resources are stretched, and the smaller brand finds itself relying on its past more than its present. Factories overseas continue to update, but the American side of the business has not seen the same level of investment. Without a stronger push into this market, its voice grows quieter year by year. Even so, the character that made these motorcycles unique has never disappeared. Enthusiasts describe ownership as unlike anything else, a rhythm in the ride and a heartbeat that links man to machine. For them, the bond outweighs long waits for parts or drives to distant service centers, as they see themselves as guardians of a legacy, determined to keep the eagle emblem alive on American highways. Yet passion alone cannot carry the brand forever. New riders want visible support, confidence, and relevance, and without stronger investment, loyalty may fade as older generations grow smaller. The future of this proud European name in America now depends on decisions made in boardrooms far from American soil. If the commitment to this market grows stronger, if dealers return and the motorcycles gain renewed attention, the story could continue on open highways. But if not, the eagle may become only a symbol admired in memory, rather than a companion for the road ahead. For the men who still ride them, the connection is unshakable. For the rest of the market, the silence grows louder. Before we move on, don't forget, it's not just the bikes that matter. The right helmet, gloves, boots, and gear keep us on the road. I've pinned my 2025 gear and accessories list in the description. Stuff I actually trust, ride after ride. Number 3. MV Agusta. Among the most prestigious motorcycle names in Europe stands a brand that has long been associated with artistry, racing glory, and exclusivity. For decades, its motorcycles were admired not only for their performance, but also for their unmistakable design, often considered as much a work of art as a machine. Riders who chose this mark were not chasing the mainstream. They were chasing passion, elegance, and the thrill of owning something few others could claim. The history stretches back more than 100 years, and across that time, the name has been linked with championship victories, legendary riders, and machines that stirred the soul. In today's American market, however, its presence has grown fragile, leaving many enthusiasts admiring it from afar, while only a few manage to bring one into their garage. One rider from California described his experience of finally owning this rare machine in a feature story for his local motorcycle club. After saving for years, he bought one from a specialty dealer and immediately became the talk of his town. Strangers would stop him at gas stations to ask questions, often comparing the motorcycle to an exotic sports car on two wheels. He admitted that living with it was not always simple. Service required long drives and parts sometimes took weeks to arrive, but he said every time he started it up, the frustrations disappeared. He described the ride as a piece of living history, a blend of artistry and speed that made him feel part of a legacy far bigger than himself. For him, it was not simply about transportation, but about owning something that reflected character and individuality. His account mirrors the devotion that many feel toward the brand, even as accessibility in America grows more difficult. The roots of this mark reach back to the years following the Second World War, when survival demanded new paths and the company turned from aircraft to motorcycles. By the 1950s and 1960s, its dominance on racetracks around the world created an aura of invincibility. American riders admired the name because it represented more than just engineering. It represented victory, prestige, and the promise of owning something bred on the circuit. That reputation carried weight for decades, even as financial instability and repeated changes in ownership placed constant strain on the brand. Through the years, exclusivity has both attracted and deterred. Collectors valued the scarcity, while average riders hesitated at the challenges of ownership. Other companies expanded networks of dealers and service centers, but this brand leaned on mystique, keeping it special yet limited in the United States. Its motorcycles, celebrated for sharp lines, aggressive postures, and sculptural beauty, have always commanded attention. That timeless design sustains its image, yet the very qualities that inspire admiration also reinforce the view that ownership is impractical for everyday riders. In America, that tension has left the name caught between admiration and hesitation. Loyal fans speak of it with reverence, telling stories of unforgettable rides and the pride of ownership. Yet the broader market sees it as fragile, exotic, and difficult to maintain. For older American riders who prioritize confidence on the road, ease of service, and long-term support, the brand often feels out of reach. The passion is there, but practicality has held it back. Today, the future of this legendary Italian name in the United States remains uncertain. Promises of restructuring and stabilization have given hope, but without stronger commitments to service and visibility, the motorcycles risk being experienced more through magazines and videos than on American highways. For those who do ride them, the connection is deep, almost spiritual, and every mile feels like a reminder of what drew them to motorcycles in the first place. For everyone else, the name is one of respect, spoken with admiration but tempered with caution. The next motorcycle on this list shows that even a proud American name, deeply rooted in the nation's motorcycling heritage, is not immune to the same pressures that challenge the survival of every brand in a changing world. Number 2. Indian motorcycles. Among the oldest names in American motorcycling, few carry a legacy as deep or as complicated as this one. For more than a century, it has been tied to pride, resilience, and the spirit of the open road. Generations of riders have looked to this brand as both a rival to Harley-Davidson and a symbol of national identity. It was never just a machine. It was a statement of who you were and what you valued. For many, riding one meant carrying a piece of American history down every highway and through every small town. Yet in today's market, the presence of this once mighty competitor feels uncertain, and the future looks less secure than its long and proud past. One rider from Minnesota shared his personal experience in a community forum, explaining why he chose this brand above all others. His grandfather had returned from military service in the 1940s with one of these motorcycles, and family stories about that machine were passed down for decades. To honor that connection, he saved up and bought his own many years later. He described the feeling of riding through farmland and small towns, imagining his grandfather on similar roads, the wind cutting across the same fields. He admitted that finding service could be difficult, with fewer dealerships than he would have liked, but he said the pride of keeping the family story alive was worth every mile of inconvenience. For him, the ownership was not just about transportation, but about being part of something bigger than himself, an unbroken line of tradition tied to American roads. The heritage of this mark begins in the early early 1900s, when its machines stood side by side with Harley-Davidson on racetracks, in police fleets, and in military service. It earned its reputation as more than just a company. It became a cultural touchstone woven into the fabric of America. By the 1940s, however, financial struggles began to erode that foundation, and what followed was a long period of decline. Decades of bankruptcies and failed revivals left many to believe the name would remain only in the memories of older riders who had known its glory firsthand. Everything changed in the early 2010s when a major manufacturer revived the brand with investment, engineering, and bold styling, bringing pride and competition back to American highways. Riders welcomed the redemption, but challenges soon followed as the dealer network remained far smaller than its dominant rival. Limited access to service and test rides undermined confidence, making convenience as important as performance. Loyalists accept the sacrifice, but newcomers often hesitate, turning instead to brands with stronger support and broader reach. Identity has also been a constant struggle. Enthusiasts love the tradition, the styling, and the weight of history, but newer riders often find it harder to connect. The brand has tried to adapt with updates and fresh designs, but every change risks alienating longtime fans who want it preserved exactly as it was. When familiar elements were altered or removed, online communities filled with heated debates, reflecting just how important heritage is to its survival. Balancing the demands of old and new generations has proven one of the most difficult roads it must travel. Culturally, this brand still represents choice and independence, offering a different path for riders who refuse to blend in. Yet the motorcycles remain heavy, traditional, and built for a style of riding that appeals most strongly to older generations. The challenge lies in bridging that gap, finding ways to bring younger riders into the fold without losing the authenticity that defines its identity. For those who ride them, the machines are more than motorcycles. They are pieces of American heritage that live on with every journey. The roar, the comfort, and the styling are tied to the memory of a nation's motorcycling roots. To see the company endure is to witness resilience, proof that history can be carried forward. But nostalgia alone cannot guarantee survival. Without a stronger network, clearer direction, and broader appeal to new riders, the risk remains that the name could once again slip into decline. The story of this proud American manufacturer is a reminder that even the strongest traditions must be renewed with vision and commitment. It has proven that comebacks are possible, but the next few years will decide whether it remains a living legacy on American roads or fades once more into history. For now, it continues to ride on the strength of its heritage and the devotion of its loyal riders, men who understand that some machines are more than metal. They are memories made alive again. Before we reveal the final name, make sure you subscribe. This channel is where riders like you stay ahead of the changes reshaping America's roads. Subscribe now so you never miss the stories that others ignore. Number 1. Harley-Davidson. For more than a century, no name has been more closely tied to the spirit of the American highway than Harley-Davidson. The roar of its engines, the gleam of chrome under the sun, and the sight of packs of riders stretching down endless interstates have made it far more than a motorcycle brand. It has become a cultural identity, a brotherhood, and a statement of independence. For countless riders, throwing a leg over one of these machines was not simply about transportation. It was about becoming part of something larger than themselves. Generations have grown up with the thunder of the V-twin as the soundtrack to freedom, and that history continues to shape the image of the brand today. One lifelong rider from Wisconsin shared his story in a local newspaper about how Harley-Davidson became part of his family's legacy. He remembered buying his first motorcycle in the late 1970s after saving every extra dollar from long shifts at the factory. That machine carried him across the Midwest through driving rain and searing summer heat, and he often camped along the roadside when money was tight. Years later, he passed that same motorcycle on to his son, who kept the tradition alive by taking it on road trips of his own. For the family, the bike was more than steel and rubber. It was a living symbol of resilience, adventure, and kinship. He admitted that the rising costs of newer models made it harder for young riders like his grandson to join the tradition, but he said the loyalty remained strong, tied not only to the brand, but to the memories it represented. The origins of Harley-Davidson reach back to a small wooden shed in Milwaukee during the early 1900s. From that humble beginning, it grew into the most recognized American motorcycle company and a name that defined motorcycling culture around the world. By the 1920s, its machines were trusted by police departments, military units, and working class working-class riders alike. After the Second World War, the thunder of its engines became synonymous with freedom, rebellion, and the open road. Its motorcycles were no longer simply tools for travel. They became icons of independence, embraced by generations of riders who sought to break away from the ordinary. Throughout the decades, Harley-Davidson cultivated more than customers. It cultivated a culture. Rallies drew tens of thousands of riders from across the country, building friendships and forging a sense of brotherhood that extended far beyond the machines themselves. Movies, music, and roadside diners immortalized the image of the Harley-Davidson rider as a symbol of rebellion, toughness, and loyalty. In small towns and big cities alike, the motorcycles became shorthand for a distinctly American spirit, one rooted in grit and determination. But in 2025, Harley-Davidson faces challenges unlike those it has weathered before. Rising prices have placed many models out of reach for younger riders, making the dream of ownership less attainable than it once was. Where older generations could save for a couple of years to buy a new machine, today's buyers often see the brand as a luxury rather than an accessible option, shifting its image from everyman's motorcycle to symbol of exclusivity. At the same time, a generational divide grows. Younger riders want lighter, versatile, technology-driven machines, while Harley-Davidson remains tied to tradition, heavy cruisers, and touring dominance. Despite these pressures, the company's strengths remain formidable. Its dealership network stretches across the nation, providing service and support in a way few competitors can match. Its community endures, with rallies, gatherings, and local clubs that tie riders together in a way no other brand has replicated. The emotional connection between rider and machine is still powerful, reinforced by decades of shared experiences and cultural presence. For older American men, Harley-Davidson continues to be more than a motorcycle. It is a part of identity, a bond to the past, and a link to generations who found freedom on two wheels. The echo of a V-twin rolling through a canyon or down a small-town main street carries memories of friendships, journeys, and a spirit that refuses to fade. That connection is why so many remain loyal, even as challenges mount and alternatives grow. The future of Harley-Davidson will depend on its ability to walk the line between preserving its soul and adapting to the times. If it can stay true to its roots while making its motorcycles accessible to new riders, it will remain the heartbeat of American motorcycling. If not, its legendary past may outshine its future. But for now, the brand stands tall, its name still synonymous with freedom, endurance, and the road ahead. The road has always been more than pavement and paint. It is memory, identity, and freedom. These motorcycles carried fathers, sons, and brothers across generations, shaping who we are as riders. But today, many of those legends stand at the edge of fading away. Their survival depends not only on corporations, but on communities like ours that keep their stories alive. So subscribe, share this video with a fellow rider, and keep the conversation going in the comments below. Because the open road only stays alive when riders refuse to let its history slip into silence.